Pete Seeger was born in 1919 to a musical family. His father, Charles Seeger, was an eminent musicologist, and his mother, Constance, was a concert violinist. In addition, his siblings, Mike, Peggy, and Penny, have had successful recording careers. Pete's first exposure to folk music came at age 16 at a folk festival he attended with his father in Asheville, North Carolina. At that time, Pete was going to an exclusive boarding school and then was accepted in Harvard, but dropped out after 2 years. Instead, he rode the rails and hitchhiked around the country with Woody Guthrie, collecting songs and meeting folk musicians, including Leadbelly and Big Bill Brunsey. In 1938, he began to work as an intern for Alan Lomax in the Archive of Folk Songs of the Library of Congress, where he assisted in field recording trips. He later joined Woody in the topical song group the Almanac Singers. They sang at labor meetings, migrant worker gatherings, and demonstrations, composing pro-union and anti-fascist songs along with the traditional folk songs. When America entered World War II, Seeger was drafted and the group broke up, but not before it had recorded several influential albums. After the war, Pete became the national director of People's Songs, later called People's Artists, a national topical folk song organization and the precursor to Broadside. The slogan of the organization was "Songs of Labor and the American People." Pete and Woody also started using the word hootenanny to describe their gatherings, a term which caught on later. In 1949, along with Lee Hayes, Fred Hellerman, and Ronnie Gilbert, Seeger formed the Weavers, which sparked the urban folk song revival of the 1950s and served as the model for the protest singer-songwriters of the following decade. The Weavers were the first folk group to have songs reach national prominence through record sales and radio. Their version of Leadbelly's "Goodnight Irene" reached #1 in 1951. At the height of the group's fame, they were targeted by McCarthy's witch hunts and were blacklisted, unable to record, appear on television or radio, or perform in concert halls. On August 14, 1955, Pete was brought before the House Un-American Activities Committee, where he refused to answer any questions about his political beliefs and was subsequently charged with contempt of Congress. In March 1961, Seeger was tried and convicted of contempt of Congress and was sentenced to 10 years in jail. He was finally acquitted on appeal in 1962. Nevertheless, he was blacklisted by McCarthy for more than another decade. Against all odds, Seeger maintained a solo career through the late 1950s and was in the forefront of the civil rights and anti-war movements in the 1960s. His songs were performed by other musicians in fields ranging from folk to country to rock. In 1965, Pete Seeger finally got an invitation on television with his own show called Rainbow Quest, although censors continued to dog his appearances on other programs. He became a frequent performer on college campuses, and by the end of the 1960s, Seeger was considered an institution in American folk and pop music. During the height of the folk song revival, he also recorded a number of successful albums for Columbia Records and for Smithsonian Folkways with Moses Ash. Pete Seeger was involved in almost every important facet of the American folk community. He was on the board of the Newport Folk Festival, a board member of Sing Out, Smithsonian Folkways, and many other organizations, including being one of the founding members of the Old Town School of Folk Music. And there are many stories about that, which will be shared with the Old Town School in the upcoming couple of months. They're doing some retrospectives. There were several years in which he kept the magazine Sing Out going almost single-handedly, producing 16-page issues on typing paper and sending them out while invoking those around him in handwritten notes to strengthen and stabilize the magazine, and I got some of those. He said, let's all get involved and keep Sing Out going. Starting in the 1960s, Pete also became an active environmentalist and released the album God Bless the Grass in 1967, introducing such songs as Little Boxes, From Way Up Here, and other Malvina Reynolds songs to the public. He he became involved in a long-term, successful effort to clean up the Hudson River, which flowed near his home in Beacon, New York. After helping to build the sloop Clearwater with his own hands, Seeger and others set off sailing the Hudson and singing songs in support of the environment in towns along the way, founding the Great Hudson River Revival in Croton-on-Hudson, New York, which has come to be known as the Clearwater Festival. A prolific composer, Seeger wrote more than 100 songs, in addition to manuals on playing the 5-string banjo and 12-string guitars. He has been dubbed America's tuning fork by Carl Sandburg. After years of rejection by the music and political establishment, he won many honors in his last 15 years, including being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1996, singing for the Obama inaugural concert in 2009, and winning multiple Grammys, including one in 2011 for Best Children's Album. Yet he could be found demonstrating in the cold for Occupy Wall Street as recently as 2011. His wife Toshi, born to Japanese immigrants, was his constant helpmate, companion, and manager, and they were about to celebrate 70 years of marriage at the time of her death in 2013. Pete loved to attend gatherings of the School of the Americas Watch, the People's Music Network, and Children's Music Network, both regionally and nationally, and that is how most of us came to know him and work with him. And he took part in the round robins and the opening night concerts just as everyone else. He could often be found as they were closing down the mess hall, pushing a broom after meals, and was always known as one ready to do more than his fair share. On January 27, 2014, Pete Seeger passed away at the age of 94 in New York City. Just days before his passing, he participated in the yearly celebration of Martin Luther King's birthday in Beacon, New York. So I guess we're all going to start out by singing a Pete Seeger original song that we all know and think that it's from folk music history, If I Had a Hammer.
If I had
mic down there and have a couple of testimonials.
Nothing was happening in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. The anti-war movement was going on. Nothing was happening in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. In those regards, in those larger movements, there's small movements everywhere you go, but at age 14, you're looking to the national stage and trying to find your place in the world. And when I was, the summer of my 14th birthday, I had a babysitting job. And while after the kids were in bed, I discovered this stash of records with Pete Seeger. And it was life-changing for me. I can't tell you. I had the chance to go to summer camp the next year. I learned to play guitar. I dropped out of piano lessons, which I was forever sorry for, and started singing folk songs. And it not only was a huge part of my identity, but even more important, it became a huge part of the reason for my life. And so 15 years ago, Pete Seeger was here in a concert for the People's Music Network, and I had the opportunity to introduce him on the stage, and along with other opportunities to meet him and have lunch with him and talk with him at various gatherings around the country. But he taught me so very, very many things about life and about my place in it and the job I have to do and the job that we all have to do. And I just want to tell this little side note. When he was here, I live in Oak Park, and when he was here, I was talking to him backstage at this concert, and I offered to, he was a bit of an eccentric man, and he could be a little bit edgy from time to time if he was rubbed the wrong way. And I asked him if he had ever been out to the Haymarket Martyrs Memorial and out to Center's Row out there, and he just got all in a huff and said he did not believe in monuments. He did not believe in, when he died, he did not want any monuments, and he wouldn't even go to them. And he said, my monuments is going to be the songs that I sang and that I shared with people. So Pete, here we are. This is your monument, and we're doing as you asked. So this is one of the songs I learned from the very first Pete Seeger record I ever discovered. Keep your eyes on the prize. And I hope you're singers, because you're going to sing with me. Paul in Silas, bound in jail, had no money for to go their bail. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. like a living thing. A song can travel, and it can adapt, and it can change, and it's ready to be put to work for any new job. So this song traveled, and it was put to work over and over again. And each year, there's a new place to sing this song. There's a fight for every age. Today it's jobs and a living wage. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on, because to end inequality, we know we've got to put an end to poverty. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on, for clean water, food, and air. There are folks marching everywhere. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Fights for justice across this land. Find your place and lend a hand. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on, 'cause Pete taught us from the start. We each gotta do our little part. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Even though he's dead and gone, we're all here to carry it on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on, keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on, hold on.
Thank you, Val. I'm going to bring this down now to the house, and come on up if you'd like to speak. If you've got a Pete memory, come on up. Here's the mic. Okay, we'll start right here.
Yeah, something to say about.
Hi, I'm Jan, and I used to know Ralph Browner from the Magic Soaps. And Ralph has been a linkage to me since I was in the hospital for a long time, to folk music almost once a month for years, for 21 years. And he sent me this picture that's been on my refrigerator in my disabled apartment. And there's Pete and Toshi and Ralph, and there's their sailboat. And it says Clearwater Hudson Revival, like you talked about. And it said the revival, 1 hour with Pamela Means and Pete Seeger, Holly Meir, Janice Ian, Josh White, Vance Gilbert, and many more. And Ralph was so excited getting to know him, and through Ralph's energy, I got to know the beauty of folk music and how renewing it is in my medicine. And you sang a song to me the other day, and I was very happy. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan, the Quaker Baker. Next.
My name's Jan, too, and I'm really much about folk singing or the Weavers or anything, but I think I was in Oak Park one day when Pete Seeger was singing. And the thing that I noticed about him, besides his singing, was he was probably late 70s or 80s by then, maybe mid-80s, and he could still cross his feet and stand up without help. It's something I had never been able to do in my lifetime. And he could still do it when he was 80 years old. And that was really something to me.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Richard. So, my neighbor, her name is Sean, and she's doing she was involved with a documentary with her grandmother, who was similar to Ellen Lomax, but she was an academic, and she was compiling folk songs from the Adirondack Mountains in upstate New York and Vermont. And so Sean was involved with public broadcasting to do a documentary, and she had a chance to meet Pete Seeger. And she invited us to her home because the documentary came out. It's been shown out east. And there in the documentary was Pete. It hasn't been released yet in the Chicago area. Her grandmother's name is Marjorie Lansing Porter. And there was Pete, and Pete was giving a little introduction, and he said, you know, we're folk singers, and what folk singers do is we sing about the folk. And there were so many interesting folk in the Adirondacks. He was talking about the lumberjacks, the French Canadians, the Native Americans. And this was within probably a year ago. So it'll probably be out. It might be the last time Pete was shown in a documentary.
Thank you so much. We'll have a chance for more, but now let's listen to some songs by Chris and Matt.
So Matt and I think it was 2000, but Dave might remember better. The year Pete was here on this stage. 2000, People's Music Network, and a lot of us were here, Matt and I, along with other members of Voices. I continued to work with Pete through School of the Americas Watch, and met him and Toshi and his grandson Tao in Washington, D.C. One year we were set up right in front of the White House. It was before September 11th, so you could actually protest right in front of the White House. And there they were, just kind of sitting over in the trees, and I encouraged them to come forward and do some music as a part of the stage. School of the Americas is the movement to shut down the U.S. training school at Fort Benning, Georgia, that's responsible for over 60,000 soldiers being trained by our soldiers, and hundreds of thousands of deaths throughout Latin America because of the training of these Latin American soldiers. And Pete became a part of that movement, and he came down numerous years. Toshi and Tao and Pete came down and they'd sing with the likes of the Indigo Girls and Survivors of Torture and Martin Sheen and just masses of people from across North and South America. Pete said that the SOA Watch movement was the singingest movement since the Civil Rights Movement. So that even when he could no longer come, I could call him every year to get a quote that we could use in our program and on the stage. And he'd tell me, I made sure that I didn't have just a couple minutes, that I had as much time as possible, because he'd tell me all kinds of stories. And he always had an important quote about carrying on the song. And this was one of the songs that he sang with us. It's one of those songs that just gets rewritten again and again. So we want to teach you the refrain so you can sing it with us. It's "We all shook the eagle of the SOA," but I changed it to "Pete shook the eagle of the SOA."
Which he did.
Pete shook the eagle of the SOA, the SOA, the SOA. You know that Pete shook the eagle of the SOA, and the walls came a-tumbling down. All right, I want you to try that with us, because the louder we sing it, the more those walls will shake.
Rest assured that regardless of where you chose to sit in the house tonight, even if you sat way in the back, you still have to sing per the Pete rules.
Pete shook the eagle of the SOA, the SOA, the SOA. You know that Pete shook the eagle of the SOA, and the walls came a-tumbling down. You can talk about training soldiers, you can talk about human rights, but we all know the truth about the SOA, and the called him for a quote. He said, "You know what, Chris? My mind is so strong, but my body just won't cooperate." So he was an amazing guy, right up until the end. Matt got inspired just a couple days ago and wrote a song about Pete. Yesterday.
Here's how it worked out. I was driving to and from work, driving down Ashland Avenue. Started getting an idea, started getting like a little line happening in my head. So then at stoplights, I would write down little ideas on my Dunkin' Donuts receipts. Because I do run on Dunkin'. And then got the call from Chris. This was before I even knew this event was happening. And then found out that I was going to be singing here. And I was like, well, I better finish this song. So I went out the car and brought in all my my receipts. And then put this together yesterday. So tragically, I don't know the words to it yet. Yeah, I know. And then here's what happened. I was writing it, and I got an idea that I liked on the refrain, but it brought up an ethical concern because it was a Woody Guthrie refrain. It's union made on the refrain. So then I was like, how can I really write a Pete tribute song with a Woody refrain? So then I said, well, what would Pete do? And I know, would Pete take a Woody refrain to write a song if it served his musical purposes? And of course he would. So I was like, there's no problem. We'll just go ahead and do it. So you are again required to sing along, and I think you'll know it when you hear it.
I'm just learning it for the first time.
Yeah, I haven't sung this brand new. But sometimes you just gotta go out the back and Dave, I like all that djembe stuff. You can throw that in there anytime. Feeling inspired. Maybe once a lifetime, someone comes along who teaches us the power and the beauty of a song, who shows us that the best way to set God's children free is to pick up a banjo, sing a little four-part harmony. Now you can't stop me, I'm singing Pete Seeger. I'm singing Pete Seeger. I'm singing Pete Seeger. No, you can't stop me from singing Pete Seeger. I'll be singing Pete Seeger till the day I die. You got it now. Maybe once a lifetime there is someone to see whose music joins us all like rippling waves of gravity, whose command is unelected, neither president nor king. He simply gestures to the people, and the people start to sing. Oh, you can't stop me, I'm singing Pete Seeger. I'm singing Pete Seeger. I'm singing Pete Seeger. No, you can't stop me from singing Pete Seeger. I'm singing Pete Seeger till the day I die. Maybe once a lifetime a singer comes about who stands and throws his head back and the truth just bursts out. And he taught me how to sing, and he taught me how to play. Pick up the banjo, simply weep away the day. Well, you can't stop me, I'm singing Pete Seeger. I'm singing Pete Seeger. I'm singing Pete Seeger. No, you can't stop me from singing Pete Seeger. I'm singing Pete Seeger till the day I die.
aren't playing without an auto harp, well, you're just going to have to help. The refrain of this song is walking on the edge, dancing on the edge, working on the edge of time. It got written while I was working as a payroll clerk for the U.S. Census back in 2010. There was a 15-minute walk back and forth from the end of the Skokie Swift to our office space. It had occurred to me, it still occurs to me, that those of us who are 60-something have a place in the movement right now. I am happy to say that we are not the only face of the movement. The last several demonstrations I have been out at had a large selection of 20-somethings who reduced the age of the participants, the average age, down to about 42, which was a great relief. Smart kids figuring out that if we continue the way that we're going, their futures are going to be quite uncertain. So, but for those of us geezers and geezerinas, thank you very much. Here it is. And the chorus goes, walking on the edge, dancing on the edge, working on the edge of time. Out on the edge between time and circumstance, I know a little old lady who's learning to dance, wants to move while she can with style and with grace, wants to leave this world a better place. Walking on the edge, dancing on the edge, working on the edge of time. Out on the edge between triumph and disaster, there's a middle-aged man who's working faster. Bubble in his brain might kill him tomorrow. Today he's reducing the causes of sorrow. Walking on the edge, dancing on the edge, working on the edge of time. They work for peace and justice the whole world round. Peace and justice in their hometown. Walking on the edge, dancing on the edge, working on the edge of time. If you've been laid off or retired, no reason to be shy. You don't have to sit around just waiting to die. Get a new kind of ambition, no need to push and shove. Make yourself a new position, doing work so love. Walking on the edge, dancing on the edge, working on the edge of time. You can sit at your computer, march out on the street, talk about justice to everyone you meet. You can tutor a kid who's having trouble in school, reconstruct your life by the golden rule. Walking on the edge, dancing on the edge, working on the edge of time. Work for peace and justice the whole world round. Peace and justice in your hometown. Walking on the edge, dancing on the edge, working on the edge of time. Walking on the edge, dancing on the edge, working on the edge of time.
Here's the mic. Who would like to speak? Come on up. Second person can be getting ready. Okay. And the third? All right. Welcome.
My name is Lita, and in deference to the two Jans who just spoke before, Jan is my middle name. So I just want to say I feel very fortunate. I grew up with Pete Seeger. My parents were very involved in left-wing politics in New York. Although I never met him personally, I went to my first Pete Seeger concert when I was 3, and for years had a wood chip for one of his wood chopping songs, and he's been such a part of my life. I feel like I would be a different person if he had not been that part of my life. And when I'm thinking about him over the last couple of weeks, the thing that keeps coming to my mind that represents him is the song that he used to sing with the Weavers
my name is Ken, and on the way down here, my wife Nancy and I were driving and listening to a CD, actually a double CD, of Pete Seeger live at Carnegie Hall in 1965, almost 50 years ago. And on the first song of the second CD, he sings This Little Light of Mine, which you all know. And in typical Pete Seeger fashion, he takes people through the song, both the melody and the words, so as to create this wonderful sing-along. And then he doesn't just stop there, and he says, okay, now some people can sing high, and some people can sing low. And if you're monotone, just find that note and stick with it. And then he took the tenors through the tenor line and the basses through the bass line. And my first thought is, well, why didn't he do the same for the sopranos and the altos? But I think Pete figured that women already knew how to sing in harmony, and the men would need a little extra help. But he went to that length to create not just a sing-along of the melody, but of all the harmonies. And in connection with this, I was struck by something that Kristin cited on a radio show that she did last week in an interview, and Pete's credo, which was everybody in, nobody out.
About to be released by Dr. Quentin Young, is entitled Everybody In, Nobody Out. It's the same kind of spirit.
That's okay. I only met Pete once, and that's in the 60s. He came to Chicago and did a fundraiser for the Chicago Committee to Defend the Bill of Rights, and we filled the auditorium theater. Can't do that anymore. But my wife had Pete as her music teacher during the Blacklist in New York. And so by osmosis, I've heard many stories.
Thank you. We have time for one more, and then we're going to have more music. Anybody else? Okay, I know her. Hi, Mama. This is my mother, about to turn 90.
I was on the stage at Orchestra Hall years ago, and was this far from Pete Seeger. I never knew him personally. I do know him through osmosis via my daughter. And I have a story. I just had to verify that she wrote a song called We Will Never Give Up. Is that correct? And if I'm not mistaken, she was going to a conference where Pete Seeger was going to sing. I may have this wrong, which I think she had pneumonia. And she was, someone else was driving the truck there, and she was composing it on the way there. And the words were, we will never give up, we will never give in. And she had an album at one time when we had vinyls. And on the cover were women, it was about women's movement. Women were swaying back and forth to we will never give up, we will never give in. And I just verified it was her song, and he did sing it, so
just a little coda to that. We actually both performed at the 20th anniversary of the Martin Luther King speech in Washington, and that was in 1983. And I sang that song there. I was kind of there as a representative of the women's movement that all these different organizations represented. And I sang that, and Pete said, I really like that song. I would like to sing that song. Will you send it to me? About a week passed, and I got a postcard from Pete saying, where's the song? You said you'd send it to me. He was on our cases all the time. Dave Martin about getting involved with the People's Music Network. Yeah, he was there just to making sure we were doing our part. Okay, let's have another song from, Dave. Dave, come on up.
Well, as Pete's photograph has been in all the newspapers lately, I've had a lot of people come up and say, you know, I thought I saw you in the newspaper. That's Pete. I said, yeah, you look a lot like him, yes. He was a lot more handsome, taller. Unfortunately, in the last couple of years, I've been starting to lose my voice a little bit like Pete. I guess that comes from wailing and belting it out for causes over the years. So it's a well-earned fading of the pipes, I guess. Well, I mentioned that song earlier about playing the song that Pete liked. You know, he did that. It's not that I was like one of a kind. He did that for everybody all over the country, affirming people who had a song that was addressing issues of our time. So I had to change the key on this as my pipes faded over the years, but this was kind of gathered by Guy Carawan, who was a house musician down at the Highlander Center in Tennessee. They were at the time. Pete was down there too, working with Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King on civil rights stuff. So I would welcome another voice or two up for one of my cohorts here. Anybody else? There's honey in the rock for all God's children. Honey in the rock, honey in the rock. There's honey in the rock for all God's children. Feed every child of God. That's the whole thing. That's the chorus. Let's try it. There's honey in the rock for all God's children. Honey in the rock, honey in the rock. There's honey in the rock for all God's children. Feed every child of God. If religion was the thing that your money could buy, feed every child of God. All the rich would live and the poor would die. Feed every child of God. Well, I thank my Lord that it isn't so. Feed every child of God. Both the rich and poor now together must go. Feed every child of God. There's honey in the rock for all God's children. Honey in the rock, honey in the rock. There's honey in the rock for all God's children. Feed every child of God. Now some say Peter and some say Paul. Feed every child of God. It ain't for the one God who made us all. Feed every child of God. So climb and don't ever stop. Feed every child of God. Climb until we reach that mountain top. Now feed every child of God. There's honey in the rock for all God's children. Honey in the rock, honey in the rock. There's honey in the rock for all God's children. Feed every child of God. They say our security depends on